Thank you for being here. This is the final week of our June series, Learning to Stay. And this week we are going to be discussing self-trust and honest connection. Before we begin, I always love to just take a moment to find some stillness and take a few deep breaths. This is a practice that I have found very, very useful in these last years of my life, experimenting with when people come into a space to work with me, just taking some time to actually arrive. So much of our lives are spent being really, really busy, being distracted. And so to come into a space with intention feels maybe a little different. It might feel different to slow down and take a few deep breaths, but I invite you to notice what that actually feels like in your body when you do so. As you slow down to take a deep inhale, notice what starts to happen in your body. Things start to settle a little bit. There's a different energy arriving now. And as you exhale, releasing with intention. When we do things with intention, it's very different than if we're just doing it. If we're just breathing, which we're doing all the time, there's a lot that we can do while we're breathing. But if you're breathing with intention, like I'm bringing in new, fresh energy and I'm releasing through my exhale what no longer serves me. All the static, all the excess, all the burden of the day, you can let that go. There's nowhere else to be right now. Just be here. That's a gift that you are giving yourself. And that's the gift of presence. It's the thing that I teach most in a roundabout way. We talk about freedom and sovereignty and healing and relationships and all of that. But really, the ultimate relationship to be present for is the one with yourself. Because when you are able to show up for yourself and really become the one who stays with yourself, that creates a different way to be in relationship with everything else in your life. So, over the past month, we have explored the masks we learned to wear. We called it adaptations. The adaptations we learned or we actually figured out innately as children to use in order to belong in our communities, in our families, in our friendship groups. Then the next week we spoke about the feelings we learned to avoid. And then last week we spoke about the space between our reaction when we get triggered, something's happening, and what we do next. Do we react? Do we respond? What do we do between that space? And I invited you this last week to just become a noticer, to notice, I am triggered by that, and to not punish the messenger, because life is always going to be bringing us messengers, bringing us these signals, these triggers, in order for us to finally turn toward it to have a choice. How will I choose to respond instead of react? That's where freedom starts to begin. You start to have a little more space in those moments. And now you realize I have a choice right here. What do I want to do with this choice? So tonight, we are going to explore what becomes possible when we stop abandoning ourselves. So when I say that, that can seem kind of harsh. I didn't used to like to hear that, like self-betrayal or abandoning ourselves, but really learning to stay and become more curious about what do I do when I get triggered? What is it that I actually do? Can I observe that? Can I become more aware? Now there's some space there. You're being curious rather than judging yourself or ignoring your pattern. We all have our patterns. So to be able to turn towards it and not abandon yourself. So that's where the abandonment, that language comes in. Maybe it's not really abandonment, but it's just not being aware. not being curious. It's just moving through your life, constantly reacting. So, what becomes possible when I become aware that there is a space between my trigger and my reaction, and now I can choose how I want to be? And that ultimately is where self-trust comes in. I don't believe self-trust comes from always making the right choices, right? We're human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to be like, "Oh, I did not handle that well. I yelled or I got angry or I was, not very, I was just short. I didn't handle that how I wanted." We talked about a do-over, having do-overs, right? But it's self-trust actually comes from knowing that wherever life takes us, whatever we're being triggered by, we will stay with ourselves. And the reason we can be honest is because we trust ourselves enough to survive the truth. So, the truth of what? And so that makes me think of when I was kind of preparing for tonight, the truth of what? And we've all heard the saying, the truth will set you free. Jesus said that in the Bible, in John, and he said, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That's not the whole quote or verse, but it's interesting because this phrase is often quoted by itself. And in its original context, I don't think that Jesus was talking about accumulating facts or proving someone wrong. This is truth. And if you don't believe it, then you're wrong. I don't believe that. I think he was speaking more about, or could have been, I'm not going to conjecture that, but it's interesting when when I take the lens of what I used to wear and I bring some of these teachings of Christ and bring it into the lens of what if he was speaking about the way of living that leads to freedom. The more honestly we see ourselves, the more honestly we see our patterns, the more honestly we see what we've been protecting, the freer, the more liberated we become. So perhaps the truth that sets us free is not simply the truth about the world, maybe it's the truth about ourselves. Because ultimately, can we control others? Can we make them be a certain way or to believe a certain way? We can try. We talked about this last week too, trying to control outcomes and how lovely that would be if everyone would just be in alignment with what we think they need to be. But the truth that sets us free is the truth maybe about ourselves. Freedom doesn't come from avoiding the truth, it comes from becoming intimate with it. So, can you imagine like growing your capacity for intimacy with yourself? Now I can be transparent. Yes, that is triggering me because when I was younger, I came to believe that my needs didn't matter. And so now I need to ask for help. But I'm scared to do that because I think, really, do my needs matter? Can I ask for help? You see how old beliefs we carry them along with us until we finally get honest enough to say, how has this ever served me? Why do I keep doing this? And it's not judging it, it's just being curious and being compassionate, like, oh, I can hold myself here because I can see that hasn't served me. It's kept me hidden, it's kept me playing small or believing that I'm not equal to other people's needs or my needs aren't equal. So, the reason we can trust ourselves is because we know we are no longer going to leave ourselves when things become uncomfortable. Uncomfortable because we're still carrying around that belief. So we stay and we get curious. Now we're moving that unfinished business finally through us. It can complete. So this is what the entire month has been about. It's learning how to stay with ourselves intimately through whatever comes. So years ago, about 10 years ago, my life felt like it was cut back to the root. It, I don't know, that's a metaphor, but it came to me back then. Like, I feel like I've been cut back to my root. Everything I had built my identity around was shifting and changing right before my eyes. My marriage, my beliefs, my understanding of myself, the life I thought that I actually would live, the life that I had been building, suddenly kind of fell apart. And I remember thinking about a tree that has been cut back to a nubbin, like to nothing, and wondering, how does it know? How does this little nubbin know what to become now? And then something occurred to me. An oak tree doesn't wonder if it should become a pine tree, and a maple tree doesn't need permission to become a maple. The intelligence already lives within the seed. The blueprint is already there. So no matter how far back a tree is cut, it still knows what it is. And I realized that perhaps the same is true for me and for you, for anyone. The soil I had been planted in was chosen for me. My family, my religion, my culture, my beliefs. I didn't choose that soil, but I was still a seed. And every seed contains its own unique expression of life, not a generic expression, not a copy, its very own expression, an intimate expression of itself. And every tree is different, even among the same species. And perhaps we're not so different from trees. After all, we are not in nature, we are nature. When I think of it that way, I'm like, wow, look at the pattern of nature around us, and we start to see it in all the layers of us as well. And this is important to speak to, but I want to speak to it. At the time that all of this was happening, and to be really honest, and I think I've said this before, I I didn't know who I was. At that moment, I was like, I actually don't really know who I am because I had become a version of me that was based on everyone's expectation of me as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, as a all the hats that we wear, all the responsibilities that we carry as women, and whatever religion or what, it doesn't matter, just the culture of being a woman, there are many hats that we wear. And so to have some of it, I'm not going to say it was stripped away, but there was a lot that felt like it had fallen away. And there I stood with nothing, like, well, wow, now what? And maybe you can relate to this. Maybe some of this resonates for you too. I'm speaking to a certain thing, but I know we all have moments where we feel cut back. And so maybe some of this resonates. And at the time, I didn't feel like I could trust my inner voice. In fact, trusting myself felt maybe a little bit dangerous. Letting go of what had always felt familiar to me made me wonder whether I was losing my footing rather than finding it. So every step that I took felt so risky, scary, and yet something very fascinating happened as I continued. The further I moved toward what felt true and aligned in me, the more alive I became. Not more certain, more alive, more honest, more authentic, more connected, more myself. I would never have guessed that. So looking back, I can see that I wasn't following a plan. What I was following was a pull. Like I suddenly was very curious about meditation and psychology. I was traveling a lot and I was learning about new cultures and experiencing new people and their stories, spirituality and healing and learning and relationships. All of this like really lit me up. I was drawn to it. I wasn't drawn to go live like, I don't know, somewhere where I was studying animals or something. For someone else, that might have been their truth. But for me, all of these things I felt very called to go look at that, go study that, go explore that. And so I did. And every meaningful turn of my life began with being drawn toward something. And I trusted that pull enough to take the next step, not the whole path. I never thought, oh, I'm going to end up doing these gatherings. Not once did I ever think that. And yet I trusted enough to just take the next step. And in doing that, I realized I can trust myself. It's not dangerous. I can take the next step and I will be guided what the next step is in that moment. And that felt so beautiful because for the first time in my life, I was making choices that were based on something really authentic and true to myself. So I think many of us spend years asking other people what kind of tree we should become. Does that make sense? I don't know if you want in the chat, if you want to share any thoughts about this, or if you have something to say about this, if you have felt any of this in your own life, I would love to hear that. I think any of us would love to hear how this might be resonating for you. But if I'm really honest, I did spend all of the years of my life up until just recently kind of looking sideways, checking in with myself and looking sideways. Like, what kind of tree should I be? That looks like a good tree over there. That's a beautiful tree. That's a beautiful tree over here. Never really understanding that I was my own seed. You know, we look to our parents, our partners, our teachers, even our religious leaders, our culture, our society, and we look outside of ourselves for permission, outside of ourselves for certainty or for answers. Meanwhile, life keeps inviting us back towards something deeper. I don't know if you've ever noticed this. And it invites us not to certainty, not to perfection, not having all the answers, but into a deeper understanding and relationship with ourselves. Because self-trust isn't really certainty. Can you feel that? It's not even confidence. It's the willingness to remain in relationship with ourselves even when we don't know. We don't know. We don't have the answers, but I trust that the intelligence of my life is still unfolding. It's always unfurling in magical ways because now I trust it. I trust life. Even if something tragic happens that I would consider tragic, or if I, as I even observe other people in their own lives, there's a part of me that's like, ooh, that couldn't be heavy. And yet, why would that be happening unless they are being invited into the depths of something important to learn, to grow, to evolve, to be in relationship with themselves in a way that they know they're going to honor it? The sacred thing that's happening to them isn't something to push away or wish away, but now I show up in life with a different lens. Not that I'm bracing for the next hard thing to come, but and I'm not even embracing it. I'm actually allowing it to become my curriculum. Like if I know, looking back through my life, I'm old enough now to be able to look back and there's a thread. Maybe you've noticed this too in your own life. There's a thread that runs through all of life. As I look at it, I'm like, wow, I've always been guided by something that's very loving. Call it God, call it source, call it life, whatever you want to call it, it is there. And it knows us intimately. And as we are in relationship with ourselves intimately, we become intimately connected to that, to God, to source. So, in a way, that self-trust is the willingness to remain in relationship with ourselves when we don't know, but we're kind of offering it up to source, to God, saying, I maybe don't have all the answers, but I've done this enough to know that I can trust where it's taking me, where you are taking me. Um, and trusting that what genuinely calls to me, like all the things like meditation and um even stepping in to learn more and experience more about the divine feminine. That was part of my path. And at first it felt like, can I do that? Because it wasn't something I had really done growing up. But it opened up a space for me that felt really, really beautiful. And I could trust that. Oh, I felt called to go research that and step into that space. And I'm so grateful that I did. So trusting that life isn't trying to punish me, but it's trying to reveal me to myself in deeper ways. So here are some questions for reflection tonight. Where in your life are you still looking outside yourself for permission? If you want to drop anything in the chat, I'd love to hear. Here's another question. What do you already know deeply, somewhere deeply, innately in you that you keep asking others to confirm? Sometimes we'll say, well, what do you think? Should I do this or this? And we go and we talk to people as if they're going to know better what we should be doing for ourselves in our own lives. What have you been quietly drawn toward that you continue to dismiss? Where have you outgrown the soil that was given to you but remained because it feels familiar? Whatever that is. And what would become possible if you trusted the next step, even without seeing the whole path? And this is something I want to bring in here. We can take a step towards something and another step, and maybe even another step, and we're pretty far on the road. And then guess what? It doesn't feel aligned anymore. Does that mean we have to stay on that path? No, it actually means, oh, I got into this and it actually feels like a no now. Okay, I can take a do-over. We can do a do-over at any time. I think I've lived so many lives, versions of myself within this one life that I think it's pretty fascinating as I look back at all the versions of me, places I've stepped into, and then I'm like, no, actually, no, I'm going to try this. And that's a way to test it. Does this feel right? Ah, that actually doesn't feel aligned. Or yes, each new step continues to light me up. That must be a yes. And trusting it. There's always room for do-overs. That's what's beautiful, is that just because you started something doesn't mean you have to finish it. That's that's why we're here, is to experience things so we get to trust our emotional guidance system. It's here, it's in here. Our emotions will guide us if we'll pay attention what's happening in our body. Oh, this is a no. And one other thing I love to kind of share is that if we are aware of why we do things, why are we saying yes to that or no to this? If we can check in with ourselves, this is really useful because this is how we start to flex the muscle of trusting what's a yes and what's a no. This is how we really do start to trust ourselves. It's like, oh, that feels like a yes, but can I say yes to that? Maybe I need to say no because why? If we're saying yes or no based on fear, then let's be more honest with ourselves. Actually, I don't want to do that thing. Can I say no and it still be okay? I might disappoint someone, but that is theirs to take care of their feelings, not me in charge of making sure they feel comfortable, or whatever that looks like. So that's a great start, a great place to start. When I say yes, does my yes mean yes? Or am I saying yes when I really mean no? Or do I say no when I really want to say yes? And vice versa. Can you see how this works? When we start to check in with ourselves, what is the intention behind our yes? Is it based in fear or love? Jay Shetty, he talks about in his book, Think Like a Monk. He says there's four intentions, but I say no, it's two. He says duty or desire, love or fear. But I say duty or desire is really a form of love or fear. If we're doing it out of duty, we're scared that if we don't do that, then we're not good or something. We're not worthy. We're doing it out of duty, but we don't really desire to do it. You see that? Does that make sense when I say that? Okay. So everything we've explored this month, okay, Michelle gives a thumbs up. Thank you. Everything we've explored this month points here. So the adaptations or the masks, the feelings that we kind of have gotten really good at avoiding, and then our reactions, the space between the stimulus and the response. But all of it creates the possibility of hearing ourselves more clearly, because the more willing we are to stay with ourselves, the more clearly we begin to recognize what is true for us. So, I don't believe that self-trust is something we create. Like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and it's going to make me trust myself. It actually feels more like it's something we remember because it's always been there. It's the seed that has been in us all along, waiting beneath the noise, waiting patiently beneath the fear, beneath conditioning, like a seed that never forgot what it actually is. It's an oak tree. It's a redwood. It's that lives in us. Each of us have a special seed that is ours uniquely. You can say it other ways. I mean, there are as many paths as there are people. We each have our own way to express. And it doesn't matter what religion we are, where we grew up, what family we lived in. We are our own unique seed, and we can honor that when we finally turn toward it. Like, oh, I'm allowed to express my unique expression and follow what I'm drawn to. I'm not drawn to certain things, so I wouldn't go in that direction. I'm not drawn to math, being a mathematician. But I am drawn to these other things and I'm passionate about them and they light me up. They make me feel alive. That has my attention because now I'm in the flow of life. I'm not resisting. If life is inviting me towards something, I'm not going to resist it anymore because there is something to learn there, or I wouldn't be drawn to it. Does that make sense? So,
It makes me think of, can you hear me?
yes, I can.
So it makes me think of the stages of development and where we are in this stage. And I was just looking it up and I was like, okay, first stage is safety. Your goal is to stay safe. And some people just stay in that place. But
Yes.
if we want to grow, the next stage is we want to belong to a group. And then the third stage is integrity for ourselves and
Mhm.
self-authoring, which when you were saying seed you never forgot, I mean we came here to create. And so
Mhm.
when you say you never forgot, I think we never forgot that we are here to create. And when we're in belonging and safety, we do not create. Our goal
Mm.
is belonging, our goal is safety, and it's not self-authoring.
Yeah, well, what you say kind of reminds me of how I felt. We don't know what we don't know. When you're safe, you're very comfortable, but you can also be in survival. I felt looking back now, I think I was kind of in survival mode for many, many years of my life, not even knowing I was living in survival because I was like, everyone's doing this. Okay, I'm doing this too. But there was something deeper that didn't feel aligned, but I didn't know how to put my finger on it. I wasn't, yeah. So what that the later stages are individuation. Like so we become, yes, we can still belong, but we can belong as an individual, not just going along because everyone's like, yeah, this is what you do. This is how you be. This is the culture of the overculture of being human, right? So we get socialized, and that's not a bad thing. I think it actually serves a really beautiful purpose to be socialized, however. And then if we, I don't want to say have the courage, but life has a way of stripping away what isn't true. if we're willing to turn towards it and be really honest, I can be like, yeah, I was carrying that around for a long time and it didn't feel true. So now I can trust myself to keep aligning with what actually feels true and it lights me up. So can I don't want to fight against that anymore. That was exhausting. It took there was a cost for me, right? I don't know. Everybody has their own version of that. Um,
Well, and I like that it says in the self authoring stage, you shift from group defined morality to integrity based internal morality, shifts from what do you want me to believe to what do I believe.
yes, thank you for
I
saying
love
that.
that.
I love that. And I loved what you said about say that again. Okay, so
So it says you shift when you're in the self-authorizing, self-defining stage. You shift from group-defined morality. So this is what the group believes
right.
to integrity, me, internal morality shifts from what do you want me to believe to what do I really believe.
Exactly. What feels true here. And that's why I don't want to get tangled in religion and things like that because I think it lives everywhere. This idea that if I am going to obey rules for the rules' sake, why am I doing that? That actually is based in fear of not belonging to the group. There's so many layers to it. If I want to belong, then I have to believe like them, or what's going to happen to me? When you start to trust yourself, right? In the context of what we're speaking to tonight, is I can trust that if I make a mistake or I sin, that experience taught me something very deep about what my integrity is, where I want to align. And actually, it isn't that thing over there, but how would I have known if I never had the experience? Right? There's perfect obedience, but if we're being perfectly obedient out of fear, what have we learned? What
Well, and I think like in the second stage, it says you reference your group to know how to think, to believe, but you're not yet capable of believing or thinking for
for
yourself.
yourself. And it doesn't matter if you land in the same place or somewhere else. If you land in the same place, now you've had enough experience to know this is where I want to be. This still feels true for me, and that's beautiful. The
And
same.
in that second stage, also you're more aware of our impact on others, but your sense of self still lives in the group.
Yeah. And this is where it gets really beautiful when you're in relationship with people that maybe have different belief systems than you or whatever. And that's okay because
Well,
you're
and people in that stage need to only hang out with people like them because they actually can't handle it.
That's the thing. It's like when you finally kind of realize and be open to like, I don't need to control someone else. I'm okay with someone believing something different. I hope they can do the same with me. And it's this beautiful synergy that arrives when no one's trying to change someone else's beliefs or convert them to their thing. It's like, no, I trust you to be a big enough being to discover your truth. That's beautiful because it's the energy of acceptance and compassion and love. There's no fear there anymore of like, I need to control you. You need to be doing this because I can't be comfortable unless you are. That's very different. So I'm glad you brought this up, Tamara. Thank
Well,
you.
and I loved like when I look at here, the first stage, it's really interesting. It's called the egocentric stage because
Yes.
it's all about you. It's
Yes.
all about you are serving me. And
Hmm.
then you go to a group, which is a little bit more open. And
Yes.
then you go to, I don't need them, the group, but I can self
I,
author.
I can be, well, I can even stay in the group and let them be where they're at because I'm confident enough. It doesn't, even if they say things to me like you should be doing this different, I don't need to prove anything anymore because I trust myself. I'm safe to trust that how I have been guided and felt so aligned, that's enough. I don't need to try to explain it to someone or prove it to anyone because it doesn't need to be proven. I feel it. It's deeply known and lived here. That's a very different way to be in relationship with life. You're right. It goes from living not in the ego, which is your mind and thoughts and kind of judgment and fear. And then we drop down to our heart and it's like, oh, I'm love. I've never been separate from it. So why do I need to judge someone else for being on a different path or living in a different way? That's okay. That's their choice. It doesn't make me, it doesn't trigger me into trying to convert them to my way of thinking or belief.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, because you're actually not capable of choosing love unless you get to that third stage. And they say 90% of people never get to that third stage. So that's
Mm.
like, whoa, wait, but we're all
Wow.
saying we love, but
Right?
we're actually in safety in those other two stages all the time. It's all about
You,
you, really.
yeah. I see, Michelle, you've raised your hand. I want to finish this thought with Tamara because my question for all of us, do you think you've ever experienced in human interaction love without conditions? Do you think you have? Have you ever felt that? Loved without any conditions on it?
I think I'm starting to get there, but it's taken a long time because I think I've had to go through all these stages also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think the stages, it's not linear. Like we're never the same person, right? Now the stuff we're learning about quantum physics and how like within a millionth of a second, like our energetic, the cells, everything is like being replaced and over. So we're never the same thing, even right as we're talking from the beginning to the end, we're different. So to think that we're going to linear be like, oh, I checked this box, I did this is my stage, look at where I am now. I think it's like this, it's like a spiral thing that we start to evolve and we're evolving and we come back around. Life shows us the same thing, but we're not the same. So now we're like, oh, this thing. Ah, I have a choice and I'm choosing love now. So now it kind of becomes transmuted. We become alchemists. That old energy doesn't affect us like it used to. We're not triggered. We know we have a choice. Oh, I choose love. I'm not going to judge that. Not going to judge that part of me that used to be that way. I'm going to let her come back home to my heart and I don't need to think about it. I don't need to do a lot of work about it because I just accept it that that's what I was then. These were the choices I made and they felt right back then, but now I'm a different way. And we can give everyone that same grace. And that's where things start to you start to really feel free because you're not tethered to energetic resistance to how someone else is living their life or the past versions of you that made mistakes. You're like, oh, I'm so glad that actually happened because I learned now where I stand. I'm not available for that anymore, or I wouldn't do that again. And that's okay. I'm so glad that I actually had that experience because now I know that's not who I be. I'm something very different now, and we all are. Can we give that same grace that people are always changing? When people say they'll never change, I'm like, actually, that's not true. We're always changing. Can we give someone else that same grace that they can change too with the power of love? And the more we accept them just as they are, they're probably more likely to change at that point because they're not feeling energetically judged, right? And they might be less likely to judge themselves if they're feeling love and compassion from something outside of them. That's true too. Okay, Michelle, you had a question, and then I want to wrap this up in just a second because I've gone a little over time.
I just was so grateful for the whole discussion, but I was going to ask Tamara if she could reread like the last thing she read. It was sort of the second to last thought. It really hit me powerfully and I didn't want to interrupt. So I know it's maybe kind of hard to find now,
The
but
stages, right? It was
mhm.
not the last thing, it was something in between, maybe.
Okay, so I don't know which one she's referencing to, but I know most people stay in that second stage where we're earning love, which she said, to truly love, capable of choosing love, we need to be in that third stage. Otherwise, we're basically doing things to earn it. We're doing things for safety. We're dependent on authority figures, whoever that might be, husband, parents, friends.
Systems, yeah, even.
Systems, yeah, the systems. And in that third stage, we are actually being what we are here to be, which is a creator, to create our lives. So that's what triggered me on these whole stages, is when Noelle was saying, the seed that you never forgot. I was like, that's because we came here to create, and we cannot create in those other stages. We're actually not even capable of deep intimacy because we're still trying to earn and belong and feel safe.
Yeah.
I think, there was a sentence in there that was about how you begin to transition, I guess, from the group, from the safety of the group, to being able to be okay on your own.
Individuation, kind of like saying, this is,
when you shift from group defined morality to integrity based internal morality. So it's not the group, what the group says is good for you. It's what I say is good for me. And it shifts from what do you want me to believe to now what do I believe? And that's challenging, because I think in that space, we have to be okay with being wrong.
You're right, because that's why I'm saying, being cut back to my root, I'm like, how will I know what feels right?
It's a risk.
It's a risk, because in the system that I was raised in, it was like, if you trust this and it doesn't give you the answer that everyone else got,
then I can just blame them. But when you actually have to look at yourself, it actually takes more self-esteem to be in the self-authorizing, because you're capable of being wrong. You're actually capable of it. You're like, I'm okay and I can be wrong.
I can be wrong, right? I can be wrong. I can take steps there and be like, whoa, that's not right. That's why I'm saying that part of me, now I've flexed that muscle enough. I'm like, oh, I trust this. When I feel drawn to something or called to something, like I'm getting ready to get in an RV and drive for a couple months, and I have no plan, really. People are like, how long are you going to be? Where are you going to be? I'm like, I don't know, but I trust enough that feeling, that call, that I must go. And I have no idea what will transpire. But that right there is where magic lives, because I haven't decided in my mind, well, I'm going here, I'm going to stay here in this. And when I do that, I'm collapsing every possible outcome that is possible, because I'm creating, well, I need safety. I need this. This makes me feel comfortable to know I'm sleeping there that night. And I'm like, no, how I travel, and I've always traveled, is not knowing, because I've done it enough to know if I miss the train, I was not supposed to go there. Something else is waiting for me over here. Does that make sense? And now when I travel, when I come back home, I'm like, wait a minute. How can I live my life how I travel? If I'm so comfortable traveling for a few weeks and I know I don't have a plan, and it always ends up being so beautiful. I meet the right people. I have the nice experiences. I find this cute little restaurant with the best food, and it wasn't in the direction of the train that I missed. It was somewhere else. And so I can trust that life is always guiding me to the right place. And it's doing it not just in my travels, it's doing it in my life. So people think I'm crazy. You're going to get in an RV and you're going to drive and you're just going to like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. But for me, it doesn't feel crazy. It feels like magic.
Well, it reminds me of the Israelites having to go into the Red Sea.
Right?
They couldn't sit on the shore and say part. They had to actually get in, go to their waist, and lean not onto their own understanding until the Red Sea actually parted. There's a
There you go.
principle there.
Yeah, there's a perfect story metaphor of life, not just that thing. And I think it's probably what it was speaking to as well, maybe both and. But it's literal and metaphorical, which I think so much of the of what Christ was saying in the scriptures, they can be taken literal, but if you look at the metaphors in it, it's so rich. It's so rich. Like, how can I make that personal and collective, both and? So like really trusting life, like, yeah, I might get lost and it might be awful. Yeah, I'm going to get probably a flat tire. I don't know. But what things can happen here if I stay here. Just going out on a pilgrimage doesn't mean that bad things are going to happen. If anything, I don't give attention to what could go wrong. I've had so many people ask, what if this happens? What if this? And I'm like, I don't live my life like that. I don't live in fear. I try not to. Of course, there's fear and there's anxiety sometimes, but I catch myself in the middle of it and I'm like, wait, I forgot. I have a choice. Where my attention goes, my energy flows. And the more my experience of reality will be based on what I'm giving my attention to. I'm not kidding. Like, that's how reality, when you talk about being a creator, Tamara, we are creating our reality by what we are giving our attention to. If we are glass half empty, I promise your life will be glass half empty life. It's just that way. I've sat with too many clients that all they can see is this is what I was diagnosed with and this is the thing, and I'm like, you are growing that into your reality where you won't know anything but that, because it will become all, you'll be immersed in it. But if you're like, what if I take my attention and place it here? What becomes possible now? Because I believe it can. I think life is magic because I focus on that. I focus on all the beautiful things that could arrive in my path on this trip, not the things that will go wrong. Things will go wrong, yeah, but it's taking me to the next best thing. Even if I get the flat tire, the person who shows up is going to tell me to go here, go visit that. Great. It's an adventure. And our lives get to be that too, not just a little pilgrimage. All of life gets to be magical because I believe it is. That's where I put my attention now. That is life changing when we can lean.
It's not being afraid to create something even hard, to recreate it to be easier. I think that's where I think we get stuck in that fear, is we're so afraid to get it wrong, but
Yes,
nothing's gone wrong to get it wrong. We're just
right.
experimenting upon the word.
No, it's exactly that. Like the example is like, oh, I missed the train. That's the end of the world. No, if I can like a mindset shift is actually saying immediately, I wasn't supposed to get on that train or I would have been on it. That's how life works. I am being redirected to the thing that is meant for me to experience. That's a very different way to look at life. And I love that way to think, because then, something's hard, but it's pushing me to evolve, to experience something that is going to, it's always a win-win. Even the hard things. Good. This is hard. It is inviting me to evolve, to level up, to think of this as like, wait, what is this trying to teach me? Or it wouldn't be happening. So, this week's invitation is notice what you are drawn toward, not what you think you should do, not what makes sense to everyone else, because what I'm about to do in the next months doesn't make sense to very many people. Not what earns approval, Tamara, what you said. Just simply notice what is calling to you. What sparks your curiosity? What brings you alive? And before dismissing it, stay curious. What if that pull is not random? What if life has been guiding you all along? And what if the next step is not something you need to figure out? What if it is something already trying to find you? That's what's beautiful. It's like we think we're out there searching, but guess what? What we want actually wants us too. It's trying to align us with synchronicities and coincidences because our thoughts and our beliefs are not here. We are living in an energetic soup, and our thoughts carry out and they bring back. This is what I'm stepping into next month. So as we close this month, I want to thank you for exploring this journey with me. And over the past weeks, we kind of talked about the masks that we wore, our emotions, our reactions, but most importantly, learning how to stay with ourselves. And next month, I want to invite you into a new conversation. We're going to begin exploring the relationship between consciousness, our inner world, the reality we are experiencing, and we'll begin to look at how our beliefs, our attention, our awareness shape the way we move through life. And how,
Hey, and if everybody wants a really good book to read around that,
yes,
I'm reading Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural.
becoming
It's
supernatural.
deep,
That's a good
but
one.
it's good.
Yes. And that's the thing. I mean, everything's energy. Everything's
It's
energy.
cool. It's a
How
good
are
book.
we in relationship with it? So it's so fun to explore these things. Yeah, and even science and spirituality are pointing to the same truth. And it's lovely to know that now. So I hope you'll join us, and thank you. Thank you for this act of self-care, for showing up here, Tamara and Michelle. Thank you. And anyone else here watching this later, thank you. And I hope you will be here next week as we kind of dive into some conversations that are really fascinating because we're learning so much now about quantum science and quantum physics and the reality that we actually are creating, not even knowing we're creating it sometimes. So that's going to be fascinating to do. Okay, thank you. Happy Wednesday night. I will return you back to yourselves. Thank you for being here. And I love and believe in you. Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.